My name is Sarah Elizabeth Chen, and I'm 33 years old. I've always been the peacekeeper, the one who smooths over family tensions with a smile and a change of subject. But on my birthday, what should have been my special day, everything I thought I knew about my family came crashing down like a house of cards in a hurricane. The wine hit me square in the chest, burgundy spreading across my white silk dress like blood from an open wound. The restaurant fell silent, every conversation stopping mid-sentence as 60 pairs of eyes turned to witness my humiliation. My brother Marcus stood there, his face twisted with rage, the empty glass still clutched in his trembling hand. "This is the price you pay for acting superior," he shouted, his words echoing off the walls of the upscale Italian restaurant I'd carefully chosen for my birthday celebration. The same restaurant where we'd celebrated every major family milestone for the past 5 years. I stood frozen, wine dripping from my hair onto the hardwood floor, feeling smaller than I had since childhood. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then my father, my own father, stepped forward and wrapped Marcus in a protective hug. "He just needs to let it out," Dad said, his voice carrying that same tone he'd used when Marcus was 7 and threw tantrums in grocery stores. "You know how sensitive he gets." I stayed silent. Just like I always did. What would you do if your own family chose your attacker over you on your birthday? Keep watching to find out how this night changed everything. The other guests, my colleagues, a few close friends, extended family, began gathering their purses and making awkward excuses. "Happy birthday, Sarah," they mumbled, avoiding eye contact as they filed past our table toward the exit. Within 10 minutes, the private dining room that had been filled with laughter and celebration was empty except for my immediate family. Mom finally spoke up, but not to comfort me. "Sarah, why don't you go clean up in the bathroom? We'll wait for you." Her voice carried that familiar edge of disappointment, as if somehow this was my fault. I looked down at my ruined dress, the one I'd saved up for 3 months to buy, the one that made me feel confident and beautiful. Now it clung to me like shame, purple stains mapping out my humiliation. I could feel my carefully applied makeup running down my cheeks, though I wasn't sure if it was from the wine or the tears I was desperately trying to hold back. "Actually," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I think I'll just head home." "Don't be dramatic," Marcus said, his earlier rage replaced by that casual dismissiveness I knew so well. "It was just a little wine. You act like I committed murder. Just a little wine. On my birthday. In front of everyone I cared about." That night, as I sat alone in my apartment peeling off the stained dress, I made a decision that would shock everyone who thought they knew me. I wasn't going to smooth this over. I wasn't going to pretend it never happened. I wasn't going to be the family scapegoat anymore. I reached for my phone and began typing messages that would change everything. By 8:30 the next morning, when they finally noticed what I'd done, it was already too late to take it back. The Sarah they thought they knew, the one who always forgave, always accommodated, always put family first, was gone forever. But to understand why that night was the final straw, I need to take you back to where this story really began. Back to a childhood where love was conditional, where keeping peace meant sacrificing myself, and where I learned that being the good daughter sometimes meant being invisible. Growing up in our house was like living in a perpetual performance where everyone knew their role except me. Marcus was the star, charismatic, athletic, the son who could do no wrong even when he was clearly in the wrong. Mom and Dad orbited around him like planets around the sun, while I existed somewhere in the outer darkness, grateful for whatever light happened to spill my way. I was 8 when I first realized the rules were different for us. Marcus had just turned 11, and he'd been caught cheating on his math test, not just glancing at someone's paper, but with elaborate notes written on his arm in tiny print. The teacher, Mrs. Henderson, called home to schedule a parent conference. I remember sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework when Mom hung up the phone, her face flushed with anger. "That teacher has it out for Marcus," she announced to Dad, who was reading the newspaper. "She's always picking on him because he's more advanced than her other students." Even at 8, I knew this was wrong. I'd seen Marcus struggling with math homework for weeks, throwing tantrums when Dad tried to help him. But I also knew better than to say anything. The next day, Mom marched into school in her best power suit and demanded Marcus be moved to another class. By the end of the week, he was in Mr. Peterson's room, and somehow the cheating incident had been resolved with no consequences. That same year, I won the school's science fair with a project about plant growth that I'd worked on for months. I'd carefully documented how different types of music affected seedling development, staying up late to measure stems and record observations in my neatest handwriting. When I came home with the first place ribbon, practically vibrating with excitement, Mom looked up from helping Marcus with his geography homework. "That's nice, sweetheart," she said, then immediately turned back to Marcus. "Now, what's the capital of Montana again?" Dad didn't even look up from his laptop. I kept that ribbon on my bedroom mirror for years, a small reminder that sometimes I could be special too, even if no one noticed. The pattern continued through middle school and high school. When Marcus got suspended for fighting, it was because the other kid provoked him. When his grades slipped, it was because his teachers didn't understand his learning style. When he wrecked Dad's car at 17, it was because the roads were slippery, not because he'd been drinking at a party. Meanwhile, I was expected to be perfect without recognition. Straight A's were assumed, not celebrated. My scholarship to State University was met with "that's expected" rather than pride. When I graduated summa cum laude, the family dinner conversation centered on Marcus's latest job interview. I learned to shrink myself to fit the space left over after everyone else's needs were met. I became an expert at reading moods, at deflecting tension, at making everyone else comfortable even when I was falling apart inside. It was easier than fighting for attention I was never going to get. By the time I started my career in marketing, I'd perfected the art of being indispensable while remaining invisible. I planned every family gathering, remembered every birthday, smoothed over every conflict. I was the daughter they could count on, the one who would never cause problems or demand too much. Marcus, meanwhile, had turned professional disappointment into an art form. He'd been fired from 6 jobs in 8 years, each time because someone else didn't appreciate his vision. He'd moved back in with our parents twice, borrowed money he never repaid, and somehow convinced everyone that his failures were evidence of his superiority, not his shortcomings. "He's too creative for corporate life," Mom would explain when friends asked why their 30-year-old son was living in their basement again. Brilliant people often struggle in conventional settings. The night before my birthday party, I'd spent 4 hours preparing, shopping for decorations, confirming RSVPs, making sure the restaurant had everyone's dietary restrictions noted. I'd even bought Marcus a new shirt because Mom mentioned he didn't have anything nice enough for the occasion. I should have known something was wrong when he arrived 20 minutes late, his eyes already glassy from whatever he'd been drinking before dinner. I should have recognized the signs, the way he kept checking his phone, the forced smile when people congratulated me on my promotion, the way he flinched whenever someone mentioned my recent success. But I was too busy being the perfect hostess, making sure everyone else was happy, to notice that the brother I'd spent my whole life protecting was about to destroy me in front of everyone who mattered. The worst part wasn't the wine or the shouting or even the humiliation. The worst part was watching our parents' immediate response, not concern for me, not anger at his behavior, but protective instincts rushing to shield their golden child from the consequences of his actions. As I sat in my wine-stained dress that night, I finally understood something that should have been obvious years ago. I wasn't part of this family. I was just the supporting cast member who made everyone else's story possible. That realization was both devastating and liberating. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And once you stop trying to earn love that was never available, you can start making choices that actually serve you. The messages I sent that night weren't angry or vindictive. They were simply honest. And sometimes, the truth is the most radical act of all. I sat on my bathroom floor at 2:47 a.m., still wearing the wine-stained dress, my phone glowing in the darkness. The messages I was about to send would detonate like bombs in our family's carefully constructed mythology, but I was past caring about the fallout. The first message went to my parents. After tonight, I need you both to know that I'm done pretending this is normal. Marcus threw wine at me at my own birthday party, and instead of standing up for me, you comforted him. I've spent 33 years being the daughter who causes no problems, who accommodates everyone, who pretends that being treated as less important than Marcus is acceptable. I'm done. Don't contact me unless you're ready to acknowledge how tonight went and take responsibility for a lifetime of enabling his behavior toward me. The second went to Marcus. You humiliated me tonight in front of people I care about, and you felt justified doing it because you've never once in your life faced consequences for treating me badly. That ends now. Until you can genuinely apologize for tonight and acknowledge how your behavior has affected me over the years, we have nothing to say to each other. The third message was the hardest to write. It went to my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins who'd witnessed years of this dynamic. I want you all to know that after tonight's incident at my birthday dinner, I'm taking a step back from family gatherings. Many of you saw what happened, and I hope you understand that I can't continue participating in events where I'm expected to tolerate disrespectful treatment in the name of keeping peace. I love you all, but I need to prioritize my mental health and self-respect. I hit send on all 3 messages before I could lose my nerve. But I wasn't finished. At 3:15 a.m., I opened my laptop and began typing a resignation letter for my role as the family's unpaid event coordinator, emotional labor provider, and conflict resolver. I made a list of every family gathering I'd organized in the past 5 years, every birthday I'd remembered when no one else did, every crisis I'd helped manage while my own needs went unnoticed. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I made a list of things I wanted to do with my life that I'd put on hold to be available for everyone else's needs. Travel to Italy. Take that pottery class I'd been talking about for years. Learn to salsa dance. Date someone without worrying about whether my family would approve. At 4:22 a.m., I booked a flight to Portland to visit my college roommate Emma, who'd been begging me to come see her new house for months. I'd always said I couldn't take time off, couldn't leave town when family might need me. For the first time in my adult life, I put my own desires first. When I finally fell asleep around 6 a.m., I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone started ringing at 7:30 a.m. Mom's ringtone, the one I'd programmed years ago when I still answered every call immediately, afraid of disappointing her. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad called. Then Marcus. Then my Aunt Linda. By 8:30 a.m., I had 14 missed calls and 23 text messages. The messages ranged from bewildered to angry to manipulative. Mom, Sarah, honey, what's gotten into you? We're all worried. Call me. Dad, this is very unlike you, Sarah. Let's talk about this rationally. Marcus, are you seriously going to blow up our family over a little wine? You're being ridiculous. Aunt Linda, your parents are devastated. How could you send such cruel messages? Cousin Jenny, I think you're overreacting. Marcus was probably just stressed about work. Reading those messages, I felt that familiar tug of guilt, the trained response to put everyone else's comfort before my own truth. For 33 years, those messages would have worked. I would have called back, apologized for causing drama, smoothed everything over. But something had shifted permanently that night. Maybe it was finally seeing how quickly my family closed ranks to protect Marcus while leaving me completely exposed. Maybe it was the humiliation of having my boundaries trampled in front of my friends and colleagues. Maybe I'd just reached the limit of pain I could absorb while pretending everything was fine. At 9:15 a.m., I sent one final group message to my immediate family. I received all your calls and messages. I'm not responding to attempts to minimize what happened or pressure me to get over it. When you're ready to have a real conversation about how I've been treated in this family, not just last night, but for years, I'll be here. Until then, I'm focusing on my own life and well-being. Then I did something I'd never done before. I turned off my phone. The silence was terrifying and wonderful. No one demanding explanations, no one needing me to manage their emotions, no one expecting me to sacrifice my dignity to keep everyone comfortable. I took a long shower, washing the wine and tears from my hair. I put on comfortable clothes. I made myself French toast, something I'd loved as a child but stopped making because Marcus always complained it was too sweet and Mom worried it was too much trouble. As I sat eating breakfast in my sunny kitchen, I realized this was the first morning in years when I wasn't mentally running through everyone else's needs and schedules. I wasn't planning what to cook for the family dinner I wouldn't attend, wasn't worrying about whether Marcus needed money or Mom needed someone to vent to about Dad's retirement plans. For the first time in my adult life, my morning was entirely my own. The freedom was intoxicating and terrifying. I'd defined myself so completely through my role as the family caretaker that I wasn't sure who I was without it. But I was about to find out. Because at 10:30 a.m., I was getting on a plane to Portland, leaving behind the family that had never truly seen me to discover what it felt like to put myself first. What I didn't know was that my absence would reveal truths about our family dynamics that even I hadn't fully understood. When the person who does all the emotional labor suddenly disappears, everything falls apart very quickly. And sometimes, watching something fall apart is the only way to see how broken it was all along. Emma met me at the Portland airport with tears in her eyes and a sign that read Sarah's Liberation Tour 2025. She'd been my roommate at State, the friend who'd watched me field crisis calls from my family at all hours, who'd seen me cancel spring break trips because Marcus needed bail money or Mom was going through a difficult time. "I can't believe you actually did it," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like coming home. "I've been waiting 15 years for you to choose yourself." That first week in Portland was a revelation. Emma had built a life filled with authentic relationships, creative pursuits, and boundaries that actually meant something. She worked as a graphic designer, took weekend pottery classes, dated a kind man named David who treated her like she was the center of his universe in the best possible way. "Healthy relationships aren't supposed to drain you," she told me as we hiked through Forest Park, something I'd never experienced growing up in flat suburban Texas. "When someone loves you, they want to see you thrive, not just survive." I'd kept my phone off for 3 days. When I finally turned it back on, there were 47 voicemails and 82 text messages. The progression was predictable: confusion, anger, guilt-tripping, then finally panic when they realized I wasn't coming back immediately to fix whatever chaos my absence had created. Marcus had apparently gotten into a screaming match with Mom when she asked him to help organize Dad's retirement party, the event I'd been planning for months before my birthday disaster. He'd stormed out, leaving her to handle everything alone. Dad had retreated to his home office, claiming he was too stressed to deal with family drama. Aunt Linda's latest message was the most revealing: "Your mother called me crying because she doesn't know how to plan your father's party without you. She's completely overwhelmed. How could you abandon your family when they need you most?" Reading that message, I felt something I'd never experienced before: absolute clarity. Not guilt, not the familiar pull to rush home and fix everything, but crystal clear understanding of exactly how our family had been functioning. I wasn't their daughter, I was their unpaid employee. I wasn't their sister, I was their emotional dumping ground and crisis manager. They didn't love me for who I was, they needed me for what I could do for them. That night, I called Emma into the guest room and read her some of the messages. "Listen to this," I said, scrolling through Mom's voicemails. "Not one of them says we miss you or we love you or we want to work this out because you matter to us. Every single message is about what they need from me or what I'm doing to them by setting boundaries." Emma sat quietly, letting me process the magnitude of what I was seeing. "You know what's funny?" I continued. "In 33 years, Marcus has never once been expected to manage anyone's emotions but his own. He's never had to plan family events or remember birthdays or mediate conflicts. He gets to just exist and be celebrated for it. Meanwhile, I've been the family's emotional support system since I was 8 years old, and the moment I step back, they act like I've committed treason." That weekend, David took us to his family's Sunday dinner, something I dreaded attending, expecting another performance of forced togetherness. Instead, I witnessed something I'd never seen before: a family that actually liked each other. When David's brother made a joke at his expense, everyone laughed, including David, because it was genuinely funny, not cruel. When their mother needed help in the kitchen, 3 people jumped up without being asked. When David mentioned a work project he was excited about, everyone listened with genuine interest. "This is what normal looks like," Emma whispered to me as we watched David's nephew show off his new card trick to a rapt audience of adults who weren't checking their phones or tolerating him out of obligation. I started crying right there at the dinner table, not from sadness, but from grief for the family I'd never had and relief that I now knew the difference. 2 weeks into my stay, I made a decision that surprised even me: I wasn't going back to Dallas. Not permanently, anyway. Emma had connected me with a marketing agency that needed freelance help, and I had enough savings to make a fresh start. For the first time in my life, I was going to live somewhere I chose, surrounded by people who actually wanted me. There. The day I called to give my landlord notice on my Dallas apartment, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Sarah," he said, and his voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Your mother and I have been talking. We think maybe we need to have a real conversation about what happened." "I'm listening," I said, my heart hammering. "We realize that we may have, that perhaps we haven't, that the situation with Marcus has been." He struggled with the words for a long time. "We failed you. Not just at your birthday, but for a long time before that. We don't know how to fix it, but we want to try." It wasn't the complete acknowledgement I needed, but it was a start. "I'm not coming home to manage everyone's feelings about this, Dad," I said. "If you and Mom want to work on our relationship, I'm open to that. But it has to be real change, not just words to get me back to how things were." "We understand," he said. "We love you, Sarah. We don't want to lose you." It was the first time in my memory that my father had said he loved me without it being connected to something he needed from me. 3 months later, I'm still in Portland. My family and I have started having weekly video calls with a family therapist, something Marcus initially refused to participate in until my parents made it clear that his relationship with them depended on it. The work is hard and sometimes painful. There are setbacks and moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves. But for the first time in my life, I'm not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions or protecting them from the consequences of their choices. I've started dating a wonderful man named Alex who thinks my boundary setting is attractive rather than difficult. I'm taking that pottery class I always dreamed about. I've booked a trip to Italy for this fall, something I would never have done when I was constantly on call for family crises. Most importantly, I've learned that love isn't supposed to require you to disappear. Real family doesn't ask you to absorb their dysfunction in the name of keeping peace. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to refuse to participate in patterns that hurt everyone involved. The wine stain never came out of that white dress, but I kept it anyway. Sometimes we need reminders of the moment everything changed, the night we finally said enough and meant it. Have you ever experienced family betrayal like this, where the people who should protect you instead enable those who hurt you? Have you had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else find the courage to choose themselves. There. The day I called to give my landlord notice on my Dallas apartment, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Sarah," he said, and his voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Your mother and I have been talking. We think maybe we need to have a real conversation about what happened." "I'm listening," I said, my heart hammering. "We realize that we may have, that perhaps we haven't, that the situation with Marcus has been." He struggled with the words for a long time. "We failed you. Not just at your birthday, but for a long time before that. We don't know how to fix it, but we want to try." It wasn't the complete acknowledgement I needed, but it was a start. "I'm not coming home to manage everyone's feelings about this, Dad," I said. "If you and Mom want to work on our relationship, I'm open to that. But it has to be real change, not just words to get me back to how things were." "We understand," he said. "We love you, Sarah. We don't want to lose you." It was the first time in my memory that my father had said he loved me without it being connected to something he needed from me. 3 months later, I'm still in Portland. My family and I have started having weekly video calls with a family therapist, something Marcus initially refused to participate in until my parents made it clear that his relationship with them depended on it. The work is hard and sometimes painful. There are setbacks and moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves. But for the first time in my life, I'm not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions or protecting them from the consequences of their choices. I've started dating a wonderful man named Alex who thinks my boundary setting is attractive rather than difficult. I'm taking that pottery class I always dreamed about. I've booked a trip to Italy for this fall, something I would never have done when I was constantly on call for family crises. Most importantly, I've learned that love isn't supposed to require you to disappear. Real family doesn't ask you to absorb their dysfunction in the name of keeping peace. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to refuse to participate in patterns that hurt everyone involved. The wine stain never came out of that white dress, but I kept it anyway. Sometimes we need reminders of the moment everything changed, the night we finally said enough and meant it. Have you ever experienced family betrayal like this, where the people who should protect you instead enable those who hurt you? Have you had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else find the courage to choose themselves. 6 months after I left Dallas, I thought I had found peace. My life in Portland was everything I'd never dared to dream: authentic relationships, creative fulfillment, and the revolutionary experience of being valued for who I was rather than what I could provide. But life has a way of testing your newfound strength when you least expect it. It was a Tuesday morning in October when my phone rang with news that would shake the foundation of everything I thought I understood about my family. The caller ID showed my cousin Jenny's name, the same Jenny who had initially dismissed my boundary setting as overreacting. "Sarah," her voice was shaky, urgent. I need to tell you something about Marcus. Something I should have told you years ago. I was in the middle of glazing pottery pieces for my first local art show, my hands covered in clay, feeling more centered than I had in years. But something in Jenny's tone made me set down my brush and give her my full attention. "What are you talking about, Jenny? He's been spreading lies about you. For years. To everyone in the family, to mutual friends, even to your old coworkers." Her words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for too long. "The night of your birthday, after you left, he got drunk and started bragging about how he'd been managing your reputation to keep you in your place." The pottery studio suddenly felt too small, too warm. "What kind of lies?" "He told everyone you were jealous of his success, that you were manipulative and controlling, that you sabotaged his job opportunities because you couldn't stand that he was more talented than you." Jenny's voice cracked. "Sarah, he made us all believe that you were the problem in your family, not him." I sat down hard on my studio stool, feeling like someone had knocked the wind out of me. "How long have you known this?" I suspected something was off for a while, but I didn't have proof until last month. "My friend Jessica works at that marketing firm where Marcus got fired last year, you know, the one where your mom said they didn't appreciate his creativity." Jessica finally told me what really happened. He was stealing credit for other people's work, showing up late, and when confronted about it, he blamed his sister for undermining his confidence his whole life. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Every family gathering where people seemed slightly cooler toward me. Every time someone made a comment about me being too serious or hard to please. Every pitying look when Marcus would make those subtle digs disguised as jokes. "There's more, Sarah," Jenny continued. "After your birthday party, when you sent those messages and left town, he didn't just throw a tantrum with your parents. He started a whole campaign to make you look like the villain. He told everyone you had a mental breakdown and abandoned your family over imaginary slights. He said you were always unstable and that the wine incident was just him finally standing up to your psychological manipulation." I felt that familiar rage building, not the quiet, swallowed anger I'd lived with for years, but something clean and sharp and righteous. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I can't live with myself anymore. Because I realized that I was part of the problem, believing his version of events instead of listening to you. And because..." She paused, "because he did it to me too." "What do you mean?" "Last month, when I got engaged to Tom, Marcus told my parents that Tom was too good for me and that I was settling for someone who would tolerate my flaws. He said I was following in your footsteps of deluding myself about my worth. My own parents started questioning my relationship because of what he said. The scope of his manipulation was breathtaking. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or family dysfunction, this was systematic psychological warfare designed to keep everyone around him feeling small and grateful for his attention. "Jenny, I need you to do something for me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need you to help me document this. Every lie he told, every person he told it to, every time he undermined someone in the family. Can you do that?" "Yes," she said immediately. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. We all failed you. But I want to help make this right." That evening, I called Emma and told her everything. She listened without interruption, then said something that surprised me. "This actually makes perfect sense. Narcissists don't just happen. They create entire ecosystems of manipulation to maintain their position. He wasn't just the golden child, he was actively working to make sure you stayed in the shadows." Over the next 2 weeks, Jenny and I compiled a devastating dossier of Marcus's lies and manipulations. Other family members began coming forward, sharing their own experiences of his subtle undermining. Cousin Mike revealed that Marcus had told him I was jealous of his military service. Aunt Patricia admitted that Marcus had convinced her I was too proud to accept help, which was why she'd stopped reaching out during my college years when I was struggling financially. Most shocking of all was the conversation with my high school friend Beth, who I'd lost touch with years ago. When Jenny contacted her, Beth broke down crying. "I always wondered why Sarah stopped calling," she told Jenny. "Marcus told me she said I was beneath her now because I didn't go to college. It broke my heart because Sarah was never like that, but he seemed to know so much about her life. I believed him." The pattern was clear. Marcus had spent years systematically isolating me from potential support systems while positioning himself as the authoritative source of information about my character. He hadn't just been enabled by our parents, he'd been actively working to ensure his position as the favored child by destroying mine. Armed with this information, I made a decision that would have been impossible for the old Sarah. I was going to confront him directly, publicly, and without protecting anyone's feelings in the process. I planned my return to Dallas carefully. I didn't tell my parents I was coming. Instead, I arranged to arrive during Marcus's birthday celebration, a lavish affair that Mom had spent weeks planning, the kind of attention and effort my own birthdays had never received. I walked into the restaurant at 7:30 p.m., just as the family was raising their glasses for a toast. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Dad's face went white. Mom dropped her champagne flute. But it was Marcus's expression that told me everything I needed to know, the flash of panic before he managed to arrange his features into his familiar smirk. Well, he said, his voice carrying that practiced casual cruelty. "Look who decided to rejoin the land of the living. Come to ruin another family. Celebration?" I smiled, not the placating, peacekeeping smile of my past, but something sharper and more sure. "Actually, Marcus, I came to give you a gift. The gift of truth." I pulled out my phone and began reading from the document Jenny and I had compiled. Every lie he'd told. Every person he'd manipulated. Every time he'd sabotaged my relationships or reputation to maintain his position as the family favorite. The color drained from his face as I spoke. Other family members began looking between us with dawning understanding. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Dad's jaw dropped open. "You're making this up," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. "You're having another breakdown, just like the breakdown you told everyone I had?" I interrupted. "The one where you said I was mentally unstable and abandoned my family over imaginary slights? That breakdown?" The silence stretched like a taut wire. Then Aunt Patricia spoke up, her voice small and ashamed. "Sarah, is this true? Did Marcus really say you thought Beth was beneath you?" I looked around the table at faces filled with confusion, guilt, and dawning recognition. These were people I'd loved my whole life, people who'd been turned against me through years of careful manipulation. "He's been playing us all," I said quietly. "Making sure we never got too close to each other, never compared notes, never realized that he was the common denominator in all our relationship problems." Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this psychotic breakdown," he said, but his voice was shaking now. "No," I agreed. "You don't. You can leave, just like I did. But this time everyone knows the truth." He looked around the table, searching for the automatic support he'd always received. Instead, he found faces filled with questions, doubt, and a growing understanding of how they'd been manipulated. For the first time in his life, Marcus was truly alone at a family gathering. And for the first time in mine, I wasn't. But as he stormed toward the exit, he turned back with one final, devastating revelation that would change everything I thought I knew about our family's history. "You want the truth, Sarah?" he snarled. "Ask Mom and Dad why they really had me tested for ADHD when we were kids. Ask them what the psychologist actually said about which one of us needed help." The door slammed behind him, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. But I could see in my parents' faces that Marcus had just revealed one more secret, one more layer of deception that I was only beginning to understand. The truth, it turned out, was even darker than I'd imagined.